Community Viewpoint.
So welcome to the special edition of Community Viewpoint. I'm your host, John Pawlak, and I'm here today with Valley Electric committee members and our CEO from Valley Electric to explain and answer questions you may have regarding the current voting we have for our changes in our bylaws. And I would like to start with introducing our CEO, Mark Stallings. If you would introduce yourself.
It is good to be here and answer questions. I know this is a very important topic, and so we wanted to make ourselves available today. As John said, my name is Mark Stallings, and I started as CEO at Valley Electric on January 6th. I came from Northern Kentucky, and I've been in the co-op world since 1991, spent some time with BP Oil and also with an investor-owned utility up in Michigan. As I said, been in the co-op world since 1991, managed electric co-ops across Illinois, Kentucky, and now Nevada since 2002. But glad to be on your show, John, and happy to answer questions.
Well, thank you. And who's next? Tammy?
Hi, I'm Tammy Pittman. I'm a member and in District 1. And I also am a member with, John was one of the members of our committee, spent 10 years in the military. I have a background in human resources and feel like we all should volunteer. We really have the civic duty.
Okay, Michelle?
My name is Michelle Caird. I am a board member. I have been a member since June of 2019. Before moving to Nevada, I served on an electric co-op board for 18 years in Washington State. And I am chair of the Member Liaison Committee, which is responsible for the changes which have come out of that committee.
So that leaves me. What am I doing here besides being the host? I'm also on the committee for the bylaws. And just like Mark, I've been involved with co-ops almost my whole life. I lived in a co-op in a little town called Park Forest, Illinois, back in the 70s, a little townhouse. They were great being in a co-op then, get all the breaks of owning a home. But when you sold out of your little townhouse, you lost that privilege for the taxes. But I was introduced to co-ops way back then. And I've been a steel worker all my life, United States steel worker, union member. So I wanted to be part of the Valley Electric membership, not only a membership, but also taking part in designing something that we can all live with, because we've had problems in the past and we are moving forward, and I wanted to be part of that. So let's begin with some of the questions then. Let's go to Tammy. How did the Member Liaison Committee come to be?
Well, after the last general meeting, it became evident that things needed to be addressed. And so they asked for volunteers. And having talked to some folks, I felt it was my civic duty to volunteer. So I raised my hand and we went down, and I was called. We had to fill out an application actually. And then I got a call to come down to the first meeting, and Michelle was looking for folks from that group to work on the bylaws. And it sounded like something that fit with my HR background, and I said yes.
Okay, let's go to Mark. How did the bylaws, why do the bylaws need to be reviewed?
Well, what we discovered was that the bylaws could be interpreted in many different ways. And as Tammy mentioned, that resulted in conflicts. It also resulted in different expectations. And so based on those issues that have happened over the last year, we wanted to clarify the bylaws. We wanted to streamline them. We wanted to make them more user-friendly. We wanted them to be easier to understand. And we wanted them to be more clear. But we also, I think, we wanted to resolve some of the issues that we knew had come up in the last year. And so that was our major effort. A lot of it came down to how can we give members more input and more involvement and more engagement in that process. So I think we were successful at doing that. The other thing I would want to say is that this is not just a one-stop shop. This is not just a one-time effort. This is an ongoing effort that's going to continue over the next several years, or it'll be a standing committee for as long as we need it. A member liaison is really critical, and the bylaws are the first step to getting it right. And so we know there are going to be some things we're going to continue to talk about. We're going to continue to meet after this election. So we look forward to it being an ongoing process, not just one and done.
So Michelle, how can the members vote?
So this year, the members can vote either online or by mail. They will receive a packet in the mail to vote that way. Or if they have a valid email address with Valley Electric, they also will receive an email, and that'll give them a link to go ahead and vote online. So 2 different ways to vote this year.
And don't forget you voted by email when the package comes, like I did. I had to go check my files. Did I really do that? So I got it both as an email and through the mail also. So Tammy, why did the committees eliminate the $10 membership fee?
Well, we did the research and it really didn't seem like it was necessary anymore. It was redundant. So off it went.
Okay, that was simple enough for that one. Mark, why was Article 1, Section 4, conversion of membership removed?
Yeah, we had a long discussion about what the bylaws are and what policy and what procedure is. And basically, our understanding of bylaws is that they are there to interpret the articles of incorporation. More importantly, they're there to define how the co-op shall be governed moving forward. But when you get into the details and the nitty-gritty of how something is to be done, that would be more of a policy or a procedure issue. It just happened to be that in this section, version of membership, that it really got into the weeds really deep. So there was a part of that that we then moved to policy. I think it's also critical to state that the policies can be found on Valley Electric's website. They're not hidden. They're open for view. I think the other critical thing to know is that all the policies are run by the policy committee, which is just like the member liaison committee. There's members on there that are engaged. There's also staff members, and then there's directors. So there's oversight. The policies aren't someplace where we can hide things and never to be seen again. They're on the website. And then the policy committee has the oversight of those policies and actually look at them, vet them, make sure that those policies are in the members' best interest. And at that point, then the board votes on them. And then they're posted on the website. So it's very transparent, very open process. There's also several other articles that were, areas were removed from those articles. One is Article 3, Section 6 on voting. And then another one is Article 6, Sections, I think it's 8 through 12 on board officer roles, where it's a similar reason. That part of the bylaw was really in way too much detail and depth. It was going into how things are supposed to be done, and that was better suited to be moved to policy.
So there's also the finance committee and also the charitable committee also. So there's 4 standing committees?
That's correct, yes.
Yes. And those could be found online too when you go to Valley Electric to find out more about these different committees. And there's always room for one more. So
Correct. We are always looking for volunteers on those committees. So
yes. The bylaw committee wasn't overpopulated, was it, Michelle? How many do we have?
So actually, the member liaison committee started out with 33 members, but many of the members who came and were more interested in the community involvement that Valley Electric does.
Oh.
So we asked who wanted to work on bylaws and who wanted to do actual member liaison working with the members. And so those people that were interested in bylaws came with us to work on just the bylaws. But our committee originally had about 30 members. So we still have some members that aren't working on bylaws also.
Okay. So let's see, Michelle, let's see what we had. What about Article 1, Section 5, non-member patrons? Why was that added?
So this is a prime example of why the bylaws needed to be revamped. As technology comes about, broadband came to Valley Electric, and so it needs to be addressed in our bylaws. So this section addresses broadband services which are provided to subscribers or patrons, which may not actually be Valley Electric members. So the patrons don't have exactly the same rights as the co-op members. And so they can't vote on cooperative issues like a member does. The section would give the opportunity, though, for a patron to receive capital credits regarding just broadband. So that's why this was an example, again, of why we needed to revamp the bylaws.
Okay. And then Mark, why were all the changes made in Article 3, Sections 1, 2, and 3 regarding the annual, district, and special meetings?
Yeah, there were several reasons, and I think probably one of the major ones was we wanted those meetings to be clearly defined. We wanted everyone to know what the agenda was going to look like at those meetings. We also wanted it to be an efficient process for conducting business. And the intent of all of this was to give the members more insight, more oversight into the process of the annual district meetings. There's also a time in there for member comments as well. But most of it was to be transparent and just to define the aspects, the agenda of all of those meetings, annual meeting or district meeting or the special meeting.
Okay. So Tammy, why was the 30-member threshold removed, thereby leaving the quorum at a simple 2% only?
Well, it's pretty obvious that we have districts that are much larger than some of the others, and 30 members is a much bigger chunk out of those small districts. So it really just made sense, and it made it fair.
I remember those discussions too.
Yes.
All right, Michelle, why has the member liaison committee been inserted into the nomination process?
So the member liaison committee is made up of Valley Electric members. And this change would have the members recommending those who sit on the nominating committee, rather than them just being chosen directly by the board. So this gives greater member involvement and makes the issue more transparent in having the member liaison committee choose the nominating committee.
So that one I really like, yes. Tammy, how will director qualifications be vetted?
Well, just like if you were applying for a job, you go through a background process and an application. So before we didn't have that in place, and this is awesome. So there will be an application, and then we'll be going through the background process so that when we make sure we vote in a director, there's somebody that we can really get behind.
One of the things I might add on that is that whole vetting process, again, you'll notice that the details of how we're going to do that are not in the policy, or are not in the bylaw. Instead, it'll be in policy, all those details on what exactly will happen and how we will vet. So the bylaws deal with what's going to happen, and the policy deals with how it's going to happen. So there will be a policy on how to vet director qualifications, and that policy, as we stated earlier, will be on the website. It'll be transparent. It'll also be reviewed by the policy committee, which has members on it as well.
We had a great deal of conversation about that.
Community Viewpoint.
Michelle, why was the petition threshold? Why was the petition threshold to remove a director reduced from 10 to 5%?
So this goes back to lessening the burden on the members to go through the petition process. the committee agreed that the 5% threshold was more reasonable than 10%. One of the other things that the committee did after a great discussion was they extended the time period that signatures could be collected from 60 days to 120 days.
I remember that very well, yes. I remember during the 11th hour when we were talking about changing the changing that from 60 to 120, we had opposing views there from a different group. They came in there and we had a very long extended session that turned out for the best for each side, I believe.
I think compromise was used and
Yes.
collaboration. So they wanted 180. And we, after great discussion, you are correct, John, we both arrived at 120.
Right. And I'm very surprised because of the small group. Probably that had something to do with it also. We got along very well. And we, like you said, there was quite a bit of compromise there. A lot of listening and agreeing to and seeing both sides of the story. So I have to compliment everybody on those discussions. So Mark, why do directors receive compensation?
Yeah, this is always this has appeared to be a good question. I've seen the question on several sites, and I've engaged on some of those discussions as well. I think it really comes down to directors have a responsibility of overseeing a very complicated and a fast-changing energy business, energy market. The broadband business that we've entered here in the last few years is also a fast-changing business. And there's a lot of complexity. If I go back to the energy side, when I started in the co-op world back in 1991, there wasn't anywhere near as much change, depth. It's just a much more complicated business. The directors need to know a lot more than what they did 20, 30 years ago, just because the business is changing technology for one point. But it's just a lot is going on in that business. Also, there's a lot of hours that goes into being a director. It's not a 1 hour commitment. I mean, there's just a lot of time that is put in, and a lot of time is expected. There's a lot of training involved, and the educational learning the business takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of research as well, a lot of reading. I think the other thing I would add is that the directors have received compensation for many years. Every co-op that I've worked at, the directors have been compensated. Over my roughly 29-year career, I think I've been at 4 or 5 co-ops. All of them received compensation. I've been in co-ops in 5 different states, and maybe it's 4 different states. And so I'm aware of compensation at co-ops within those states. I can't tell you of any co-op in Kentucky, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan that does not receive compensation. It's a very normal part of the business. I think the other side of it is the asset base of Valley Electric is $350 million. The annual budget, right around 75 million. It's growing because the broadband business is growing. It's also growing because our electric business is growing. Our sales are growing. We have the good fortune of being in an area with growth, but it's a complicated business. And if you want to retain and have good directors, I think the compensation has really been a part of it for many years. You can debate what's reasonable, and I think that's a fair debate, but compensation is pretty standard.
Okay, well, thank you. So Tammy, why did the committee reduce the threshold to amend the bylaws from 2/3 to a simple majority?
State law actually has regulation that says simple majority, and yes, we could have something more onerous. However, if anybody ever argued or brought it to a point, it would be costly. And we decided that our pockets weren't deep enough. So we decided to go with the state law.
All right. Well, thank you. And Michelle, what's the advantage of lowering the percentage required to submit a bylaw petition from 10% to 2%?
So this is another way to make it easier for members to submit a bylaw change. It also matches up with the quorum requirement. The proposed change would still go to a vote of the entire membership. So we always have, the entire membership still always has control of the bylaws. And this is just one more example how bylaw revisions that we've put forward are shifting more control to the membership.
All right. I thank you for that. And I lost the last page. I was supposed to ask a question.
John, make a statement real quickly. As
Go ahead.
chair of the committee, I'd like to thank all the members who spent hours and hours going over every single article and discussing at length each and every one of them. And I'd just like to thank them for dedicating their time and energies to Valley Electric and the members. Thank you.
So this is something we were serious about. We weren't just there to for coffee and donuts. Oh, by the way, we don't get that anymore.
Yeah. I was
Not
gonna say
with
there
the
were
CEO.
donuts, John.
We got bottles of water. Michelle brought us bottles of water, lots of them.
Yes, we did. All right, then. Oh, I found the last page. Mark, the next steps were going to be the bylaw initiative is an ongoing effort that may take several years. Oh, we were going to ask, when does the bylaw question, when is that? When do we have to have the votes cast?
Yeah,
I know that's moved.
Yeah, COVID-19 is obviously ongoing. We postponed the annual meeting and district meetings. The Beatty meeting is still outstanding. Also, Sandy Valley is outstanding, along with Pahrump 6 and Pahrump 1 in terms of district meetings. And then obviously the annual meeting is still to be held. We postponed it 30 days. The vote was also moved out 30 days. So as we speak right now, the last day to vote would be May 14th. The board is going to have consideration at our April board meeting on how to move forward with an annual meeting. We are looking at several options. There are several co-ops, and we've been talking with them that are having online meetings, digital meetings, whatever you want to call them. So we're talking to them to find out how they're doing that, what type of platform they're using. The reason to do that is, how long do you keep delaying your meeting?
Right.
At some point, we need to move forward. The other thing they're doing is they're videotaping the president's speech, the CEO's speech, the financial presentation. They're making those available through all different forms of communication. And so we're looking at all those options. If we are fortunate and COVID-19 stay at home and if all that is lifted and we're able to have an annual meeting, then we would much prefer to do that. But so we're kind of assessing the situation as it goes on, but we're going to talk again at our April board meeting, and we may make a decision just to move forward. So stay attuned, and we'll let you know where we're going in that direction.